difficult times in life and just difficult things will come up, obstacles, but they don't have to stop you. A trauma, you don't have to let it define you. You can move on from it. And you can take what you've learned while you're in the trauma, or while you're in that hurt, and while you're in that pain and that dark place. You take what you learn, and then when you're able to do that and help someone else, you've healed.
Hello, sweet friends. I'm Stephanie Jacobs, a storyteller and advocate for social justice, and your host of the Love Light Stories podcast, a place where we uncover a deeper understanding of humanity through beautiful, redemptive stories that inspire our hearts. If you long to see more love, empathy, and true connection in our world and your own life, you're in the right place. After spending multiple years studying social justice issues, I've realized the power story has in helping us to understand, empathize, and transform our worldviews into something that's just that, views that are truly worldly. Here in this space, we'll embrace our humanity through raw and authentic stories told by real people themselves. We'll amplify their voices and learn to connect in more meaningful ways. Poverty, human trafficking, incarceration, race, immigration, and more. We'll embrace difficult conversations, sometimes controversial topics, and lighthearted stories too. If you wish to uncover the hope, love, empathy, and connection we can find in our fellow humanity, this is the show for you. So, are you ready, lovely? Let's jump in. Well, hello there, lovely. Welcome back to the Love Light Stories podcast, where we create space for real, personal stories to be seen, heard, and understood. If you haven't yet, be sure to rate the show, follow, and share it with your family and friends. Today on the podcast, I'm welcoming Diana Ashworth. A native to Georgia, she serves many roles for LifeChangers Legacy, as well as serves as an intake coordinator for the National Incarceration Association, advocating for those who are incarcerated. She also coaches others to move through their pain, having experienced much pain at multiple points in her own life. In this episode, you'll learn how she's moved through literal paralyzing circumstances, from childhood trauma to waking up from brain surgery and discovering a massive stroke had suddenly left her paralyzed from the waist down. Understand what it was like to endure such experiences and how she's been able to move through the pain and ultimately thrive while serving others. I got connected to Diana through Pamela Hillman at LifeChangers Legacy. If you remember, Pamela shared her own story and how she ultimately founded the organization in episode number 9, titled Abuse, Addiction, and Mentoring Inside Prisons with Pamela Hillman. It's a joy and honor to hear another perspective of LifeChangers Legacy through Diana's own story of beginning as a volunteer mentor to now serving the organization in many capacities. And just a note before we jump in, Diana shared her story with me before this recording, so I had the opportunity of guiding the conversation you'll hear today. Notice how she's so confident in sharing her story and how doing so continues to be a healing experience. Diana, it is so lovely to have you on the Love Light Stories podcast today. I got connected to you, I believe, through Pamela Hillman, who has been a guest on the show previously, and I won't spoil it, but I know that you work with Pamela, and I was just delighted to hear that you wanted to be on the show and share part of your story. I think you actually reached out to me, and getting to know you a little bit and your story has just been an honor. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. It's so exciting to be here.
Yes. Well, we have a lot to get into today. I feel like there's been some really difficult pieces in your story, but also there's a lot of light at the end of the tunnel, which we'll get into later. But can you just help us feel what it was like to be you at the beginning when you were witnessing the abuse of your grandfather and kind of where your story began?
When I was witnessing the abuse, I was about from what I can remember, about age 10. And I saw him verbally abuse my grandmother and physically. And it was hard being me because I didn't know what to do because I saw him do this, but I had no father figure in my life. He was the only father figure I had, but he wasn't mean to me. So I was kind of torn.
Mm-hmm.
So my emotions were torn both ways, you know.
Yeah, right. How else did it affect you? Like, what did it feel like to be you? How old were you at this time? And like, what were the thoughts going through your mind?
Yeah, I was about 10, and the thoughts that were going through my mind were, I'm never getting married if this is what marriage is like.
Oh, wow.
You know,
Interesting.
I didn't want anything to do with a man or a guy or anything because I was like, are all men like this? So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And you are married now, right? So,
Yes, I've been married 21 years. Yes.
yeah. Oh, congratulations.
Thank you.
I'm glad that you were able to work through some of that. But also, okay, so I think at age 12, he passed away. Is that right?
Yes, he did. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so explain what happened thereafter and just your experiences and how that affected you.
Yeah, at age 12, I came home from school, and usually he would come and greet me and stuff, and I'd have snack till my mom got home from work. Well, that day he didn't. And I called his name, but he didn't come, and I went in the room, and I saw his pills knocked over, and his fists were balled up really tight, but he wasn't breathing. And I went into complete shock. But even in shock, I was able to call the ambulance, and he ended up passing away and calling the funeral home. And I know that's a lot for a 12-year-old to do, but it
Yeah.
was just very hard for me, and my emotions and feelings. I didn't know what to do. I had never lost anyone that close to me, and it was just devastating. So,
Wow. So you actually found your grandfather
yes,
first that
yes,
day.
hmm
And you had to call the funeral home even?
yes,
Wow, that is a lot for a
hmm
12-year-old. I mean,
yeah,
even doing that now, the thought of
hmm
it would be so difficult.
you're right.
Wow.
hmm
Wow. So what happened after that? Like, how did you end up processing all of this?
The grief I processed pretty quickly because you have to go back to school, go back to your life. But I still cried when I got home from school every day. I would lay in his
Mm,
bed. It was just I couldn't get over it. It felt like I was just stuck and stagnant in that place.
mm. Wow. Did your family, were they available to help you through that? Like, were there discussions?
They were, but my mom's family, it was like they don't express love well. They don't
Mm,
say I love you, or I was told by my grandfather, if you cry, you're weak.
mm-hmm.
And so it's like I didn't cry. I didn't want to show my emotions, and I didn't until I was probably in my 20s. I
Oh,
have
wow.
all that was been up in me. So
Yeah. Okay. And as you're grieving your grandfather's passing, basically, did any of the thoughts about your grandmother's abuse and like the relief of that on her pass through your mind? Like, were you processing that dichotomy still that you kind of mentioned, where he was nice to you but tough on her?
yes, because she completely changed. It's like she was in a shell when he was alive. Didn't go anywhere, didn't do anything. She started to like go places. She had the freedom of doing things without him yelling or screaming or hitting her. You
Oh,
know,
wow.
it was just amazing her coming out of that. And I processed that too, because I was like, I felt good for her.
Yeah.
It's like she
Right.
escaped it. I know he was deceased, but at least now
Yes.
she could have somewhat of a life.
Interesting. Wow. And again, at 12 years old to process
Yes,
all of that
right.
and watching your grandmother come back to life in a way which is really sad to say, if
Yes,
I can phrase
exactly.
it that way.
Right.
And you dealing with this grief, and also it sounds as though not knowing exactly how to even process those emotions at such a young age without that family dynamic of really talking about your feelings and expressing those.
Right.
Yeah, wow. So what did you come to learn from that whole experience, like looking back on it now?
What did I learn from it?
Yeah.
I learned that you should share your emotions, and I learned life is short and to cherish it.
Yeah.
Because, God, this isn't our home. It's, this is temporary.
Right.
And while you're here, do what you can.
Okay, so if we can, I'd like to transition into another difficult point in your story, and that's your health. And I'll let you share about that. And go ahead.
Well, I was diagnosed after I had my second son at age 22 with 3 rare brain conditions. First one was hydrocephalus, which is fluid on the brain. And the next one was Chiari malformation, where it's basically your brain stem slips into your spinal cord. And then they have to go and surgically push it up. And then I had another one, intracranial hypertension, where my brain pressure gets too high and it causes horrible, horrible, debilitating headaches. So I dealt with these conditions for years without having to have brain surgery. Well, they got worse and I had to have surgery. I had 3 brain surgeries, fine, no problems. Okay, I had another surgery May 16th, 2016, because my brain stem was slipping into my spinal cord, and they told me I would die if I didn't get it.
Oh my gosh.
That part of your spinal cord, it would affect your breathing and your heart. So I said, okay, I didn't want to die, so of course I did it. Well, I woke up and I couldn't feel my legs. And I told the nurse that was in recovery, I said, I can't feel my leg. And they did a MRI, and it showed them that I had a massive stroke in my spinal cord, and it paralyzed me from the waist down.
Wow. And did they say whether that was just a coincidence that it happened during surgery, or was it part of the surgery for some reason?
They said a blood clot cut off the blood supply from what they could see, and they said that's what happened to it.
Wow. And that's huge, right? You're already dealing with these 3 rare brain conditions, and then you go into surgery after having 3 good ones, and you're trying to essentially save your life with this surgery, and you wake up and you're paralyzed.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
That is, devastating, I guess you could say. What was it like for you when you woke up? Like when you discovered that you couldn't feel your legs, what were you thinking? What were your thoughts?
I was very depressed. I wasn't mad at God or anything, but I was just really depressed, and I wanted to kind of shut off from the world, I didn't want any visitors. I didn't even want anybody to see me. I was just kind of bitter too, very bitter.
Yeah.
Because I was like, why did this happen to me? What did I do? I was just asking all these questions. And through all this time, what I would do, I had brought my computer with me to the hospital because I knew I was going to have recovery, but I didn't know it was going to be what happened. But anyways, I would just sit on my computer, watch preachers and stuff, and journal.
Wow.
That's all I did.
Yeah, just trying to process it.
Trying to process everything. Yeah, and I was seeing a psychiatrist, but it was still a lot to go through.
Okay, yeah. So were you seeing a psychiatrist previously to deal with all of this, or was it once this happened, you decided to start processing that way?
Yeah, I was seeing one before. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, which is so important. I think everybody should see either a counselor or psychiatrist or whatever. It's like a maintenance thing to begin with. And then when you've got trauma in your childhood and all kinds of things that we go through, it's just so important. So thank goodness you already had that support from a psychiatrist that you could lean on without the extra stress of trying to find someone and everything during such a difficult time.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Okay. So was there anything else you did to cope, or how did you move through that experience of waking up? I mean, it wasn't even overnight. It literally was, you went into surgery and you woke up and life was totally different.
Right. That's exactly how it was. You go in the hospital, walk in, you live in a wheelchair, I had met a friend in rehab, and
Okay.
the same exact thing happened to her. And
Really?
yeah, and she was paralyzed too. So we both were learning the new avenues of being paralyzed, getting around. Even operating a wheelchair was hard. I had never done it. I knew nothing about it. And so me and her, we got real close, and we were kind of helping each other, leaning on each other. And I leaned on God a lot too, though, because I knew God had a purpose, because they told me, they said, you should have died on the table. People who have these kind of strokes do not survive.
And what a blessing really it was that you were able to meet someone in rehab where you were able to lean on each other, that you had this shared experience.
Yes, it was a blessing. She's a very, very sweet girl. And like I said, we were both going through the same thing. So, we really connected with that.
Yes, yes. And I feel like this is something that takes a long time to process and move through and heal from. And I mean, maybe you're still not healed from, I don't know. That's my question. But like, when and how did you begin to heal?
It was 2021 is when I started to really heal. It's when I could tell the story of what happened to me and not cry.
Yeah.
It's when I wasn't
Wow.
blaming the doctors or being mad. I just had this peace. And I prayed to God for this peace to get through this. So,
yeah, I was going to ask how you found that peace. So it was really through prayer and God.
yes, it was definitely spiritual. I prayed, and I just didn't know what the future held for me as far as, my health issues and all that. But I knew that God wouldn't bring me this far to leave me. So I knew there was something on the other side, and I had a purpose.
Oh, I love that. What resilience and strength really that
Yes.
takes to get to that point, and to be declaring, I have this purpose. My life is not over and God is with me. And it's
Right.
true. Like,
Yeah.
you may be paralyzed, but you still have so much to offer. And do you feel like you've fully healed, or is it just like this ongoing journey, or are there still pieces that are difficult? Or
No, right now I really do feel that I am fully healed. Honestly,
that's so
yeah,
beautiful.
because I went through a grieving process. I went through a lot to get here, and I really feel
Yeah.
that I am.
Oh, I'm so happy for you that you've gotten to that point. And
Mm-hmm.
you sound so much more stronger, and you've come out with this wisdom too from that experience, and really the experience of your childhood as well. Is there anything, before we transition into what you're doing today and your purpose and all of that, is there anything that you want to say about anything else that you've learned about life, the wisdom you've gained, anything to share with those who are going through a difficult experience currently?
Yeah, difficult times in life and just difficult things will come up, obstacles, but they don't have to stop you. A trauma, you don't have to let it define you. You can move on from it, and you can take what you've learned while you're in the trauma, or while you're in that hurt, and while you're in that pain and that dark place. You take what you learn, and then when you're able to do that and help someone else, you've healed. And that's what I do.
Beautiful. I love that. And just to hear you say that too, when you're able to take the pain essentially and turn it into that purpose,
Right.
You've healed. And what a beautiful picture that creates. And, it's interesting too. I mean, of course, that's why it makes sense to have you on this show, but that's what this is all about, is like people being able to share their personal stories and turning their pain into purpose. And I actually use that phrase often. And then the other side of that is for us as listeners too, to better understand these difficult things we walk through as humanity. And to be able to better understand and empathize through that. But it's just, depending on what side of the story you're on, whether you're experiencing something similar or not, there's just so much to learn from those who are willing to share their pain so that it can be declared in purpose. And I just thank you so much and honor that you have chosen to do that, because it's just so life-giving. I think there's more value to it than we even really realize.
Right.
Yeah. And I hope it's helpful and healing too for you to share the story publicly. Like you said, it wasn't until 2021 where you really started to get that peace and start being able to talk about it without really re-experiencing that pain and crying and stuff. And I'm sure the more you share it, the more that healing strengthens, perhaps. I don't know if that's correct to say.
It is correct. Yeah. The more I share my story and the more I'm able to take what I went through and share that with others, the easier it gets on me. You know, that peace that I have, I was talking about earlier, it's a peace only God can give you.
Yeah. Yeah. Wonderful. Well, let's transition into the light in this story, which is really what you're doing now and how you've taken your experiences and really found that purpose. So can you share with us all the service and good work that you've been able to do, even though you've had these physical hurdles to overcome?
Yeah, I can. Actually, I had the stroke in 2016. In 2017, I started working for hospice, and I, would go talk to the families, talk to the patient that was, passing, and help that transition. That was very, very inspiring for me, and me being able to be there with them during that time. I can't tell you how beautiful that was. And then in 2019, I met Pamela Hillman, and she is the founder of LifeChangers Legacy, and it's a prison reentry program. And what we do, she has 4 workbooks, and we minister to the women in prison with the workbooks. We go through the workbooks, answer questions, minister, mentor, all of those things. So I work with her now, and I'm her admin, and then I do also the mentorship program. I help the mentors, do what they need to do, how they need to reach out, kind of teach them things and stuff like that. And then I work with the National Incarceration Association, and this association is for families who don't have anywhere else to turn. They have loved ones that are incarcerated. Things are going bad sometimes, and they need help navigating the system. So that's where we come in. So I've worked with them since 2021. And I'm also a certified relationship coach, life coach, and trauma coach. And I got that certification at the Coach Training Academy in Canada.
Wow. Okay. So not only have you found a purpose, you have found multiple purposes melded into one, and they're really focused together. I mean, they seem to go hand in hand with each other, but you are a busy lady.
Yes.
Yes. Well, I mean, what a great way to give to the world through such a perspective of your own experiences. And I'm sure you're able to better empathize really with those that you're working with and serving. And it's just wonderful. How did you get into the incarceration area of things?
Well, I met Pamela. She was speaking, and she was talking about, her ministry and what she did. And I started to, as a mentor, and I said, I'm just going to mentor for a year or so. God can speak to me through it, and then I'll be done. I thought I would help someone, but I did it. And in actuality, mentoring helped me. I thought I was going to be helping the person, but it helped me, by showing what I've been through and all that. And then, I was able to really connect with the mentee. And so that's why. And then also, I fought depression for over 12 years. Okay. Mm-hmm. And the thing about it is, depression and mental health, it's a stigma around it. People don't want to talk about it. They're like, oh, you'll be okay. Just take an antidepressant or don't mention it, whatever. It's just a huge stigma. But like I said, I fought it for years. But see, these women are on the inside. They are in prison, but you can be in a prison out here too, in the real world, with mental health and depression. And I fought that prison for so long. And I think that's why I identify with the incarceration arena so well, because of what I've went through. Because to me, it felt like a prison, you know?
Yeah, what a great way to put it. I mean, to really, for those who haven't experienced it, like even using that frame of reference is really helpful to better understand and break down that stigma of not understanding mental health. That makes so much sense.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Diana, I just thank you so much. Is there anything else you want listeners to understand or any last parting wisdom you'd like to share before we wrap up?
No, I just want to, let people know that bad things happen. They will happen to you, but don't let it control you. You can move on. You can get through obstacles. You can redefine your purpose. You can redefine your life, but don't ever give up.
So good. And you are a living testimony of that.
Yes, thank you.
Have you endured difficulty in your life and are perhaps considering sharing your own story too? I'm convinced the world needs your story. And so I've created a brand new toolkit to help you get it out into the world. Introducing the Confident Storytellers Toolkit. This 24-page comprehensive toolkit will help you craft and share your personal story with confidence. It's perfect for anyone who's walked a difficult path in life and wants to turn their pain into purpose. I've packed this toolkit full of support and guidance to help you share your story with confidence. And you can see the full list of things included at stephaniemjacobs.com/shop, where you can click on the toolkit to learn more. It's only $37, and I've included 3 bonuses to help you get the most out of your storytelling experience, one of which is a discounted coaching bonus. When you purchase the Confident Storytellers Toolkit, you'll gain instant access to book a reduced rate 30-minute one-on-one coaching call with me to help you put the finishing touches on your story. At only $37, my goal is to make this toolkit accessible to anyone. Go to stephaniemjacobs.com/shop to see all that's included. You've endured difficulty in your life, and it's time to confidently celebrate your redemption story. In doing so, you'll transform your pain into purpose and help others find the light they're seeking in their own stories too. Lovely, I hope you're as excited as I am for your story to get out into this world. Diana really has gone through so much, hasn't she? Throughout our conversation, I found myself wondering what it must have been like to find her grandfather at 12 years old and having to take care of things, call 911 and the funeral home, and then not having a healthy outlet for processing her emotions. Of course, it's also hard not to find yourself considering how scary and frustrating it must have been to wake up from surgery paralyzed. While it sounds that surgery quite literally saved her life, it also took a part of her life. And then, or you could say now, has given her new life, as it certainly changed her life and has led her to finding a strong purpose in serving others. I just love how Diana didn't shy away from sharing how difficult the trauma in her life has been, yet she was able to share all the ways she's thriving now today. I hope you were inspired by her story. When I asked her why she wanted to share her story, she said, "I want people to know you can overcome obstacles and that God is with you to strengthen you. I want people to know that there is life after trauma. My pain can be someone else's survival guide." Lastly, I want to point out how healing and purposeful it was for Diana to share her story with us. I'm just so thankful she reached out to be on the show. Thank you, Diana, for your vulnerability and allowing purpose to flow from your pain. If you're inspired by Diana's story and would like to connect with her, you can do so at diana@hopeandstrengthcoaching.com, which is also included in the show notes for this episode. And lastly, don't forget, you can listen to Pamela's episode sharing her story and the founding of LifeChangers Legacy in episode number 9. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast and leaning into today's story. And don't forget, you can subscribe to the show wherever you listen to your podcast so you don't ever miss an episode. And a great way you can support these conversations is to rate the show and leave a review. And if you have a friend who would like these stories, share it with them too. All of these things are the best way you can support this podcast. So thank you. And until next time, lovelies, keep radiating that love and light to everyone you meet.